Did you know that there are more than 4 million podcasts in the world? So that means that there are basically 4 million different ways to produce a podcast, which also means there are a lot of opinions and a lot of right ways of doing things, which sometimes can lead to not even just a little bit, but a lot of confusion. So I wanted to clear up what I found to be 8 common podcast misconceptions. Mispodcastceptions. Misconception number 1, podcasting is too saturated. There's no room for me to possibly start a podcast when there are already more than 4 million out there. Have you ever heard the saying of, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Right now. It's the same thing for podcasting. It's actually, I think it's even more so since now people actually know what podcasts are, because it wasn't that long ago that if you had a podcast or you tried to talk to someone about podcasts, they looked at you like you were speaking a totally foreign language. They had no idea what it was talking about. I remember telling so many people, it's like a radio show, but on the internet. Like you could put it on your phone anytime you want. So I think that actually works for your benefit since podcasting isn't this weird, unusual thing that nobody else really understands. I totally understand that when it comes to something like podcasting that seems so crowded and so oversaturated, it can feel sometimes like everybody's just competing for smaller and smaller pieces of the same pie. But something that I've learned just creating and sharing stuff on the internet for quite a few years now is that there's not one pie that everybody's splitting up. There's just like a lot of different pies, and you can just have your own pie, and the people who are interested in that pie can eat that pie, and it's just delicious for everybody. So there's no shortage of podcasting pies. There's no shortage of quantity when it comes to podcasting. Quality is another matter altogether. But this is where I think being the little guy can actually help you, because podcasting is rooted way back when, several decades ago now. It came from the world of DIY. It came from the world of people figuring it out for themselves, sharing it for themselves, and that gives you not just the ability to really take ownership of your show and what you want to share, but really be personal and unique in the way that you share whatever it is that your show is about. Especially in a world that can be oversaturated with gluts of things that aren't even real. Being able to create something that's genuine, that's human, that's high quality in that way can really not only make you stand out, but it can make your show impactful and useful for anyone who listens to it. Let's move on to misconception number 2. Podcasting is easy. You just hit record and talk. You just push the button, you talk into the microphone for an hour, maybe 2 hours, and you're good to go. Wait for the money and the fame to roll in. That is definitely what happens for sure. It's one thing to make a podcast, but it's another thing to make something that someone actually wants to listen to. So yes, the technical act of recording audio does not have to be complicated at all. That can be super simple. Push record on any device and talk for a while. That does not mean that people are going to actually want to listen to it. And that is one of the biggest misconceptions that people have when it comes to podcasting. All about the coulda, not about the shoulda, or maybe not just taking time to turn the coulda into the shoulda. For example, something I hear really frequently is people say my friends and I are really funny and we should have a podcast. And I have very rarely seen that work out, because while you and your friends might have a great time together and you might be really funny people, that doesn't necessarily translate directly into hosting a show and communicating with someone else. And a lot of times those situations just end up being people you don't know laughing into microphones about inside jokes that you're not a part of. There are those rare times where a group of people might have just sort of like this contagious chemistry that no matter what they're doing or what they're talking about, it's enjoyable and interesting, but that's pretty rare. So when it comes to creating a podcast and a podcast being so easy, really a lot of it does come down to structure and storytelling. Those things matter a lot. Even myself, my main personal podcast, Self-Promotion, The Enthusiasm Project, which I now have a YouTube channel for, even that is relatively unedited. It's done usually in one take, but even getting that unedited structure took many years to hone in. It took years of being a teacher where I learned how to talk for extended periods of time while mostly making sense. It took time to develop a workflow where I could stay on track. It takes time to plan the episodes before I record. So even though by the time I sit down and record the show, it's usually just one take and it's not edited afterwards, the planning and the preparation and the practice that went into making that possible actually do take up a lot of time. It's almost like if you've ever seen a really good stand-up comic, it sounds sometimes like the jokes that they're telling are things that they just made up in the moment. It's not something that they've workshopped and told over and over again and refined over and over again, maybe over months or a year or two before it like has the perfect structure that it does, where it can just seem like this natural thing that they just tossed out on stage. And the same is true for podcasting. If it looks like someone or a group of people are just pressing record and talking randomly for a while, but it's still interesting and it's still good, there's a very good chance that a lot of work and a lot of prep and a lot of experience went into making that happen. Another misconception about podcasting is that podcast hosting is complicated. So thank you to Buzzsprout for sponsoring this video and to make it easy not only to start podcasting, but to keep podcasting. If you're looking for a podcast host, Buzzsprout could be a great fit. I have used them personally for many years and many different podcasts. I think I've personally hosted 4 podcasts with Buzzsprout. My wife's hosted a couple with them. My friends have hosted a couple with them. It's just sort of like everyone I know has one or a couple Buzzsprout podcasts because they are genuinely a great host. Buzzsprout has everything you need to get your show online and listed in all the major directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and more. And if you want some more advanced tools, if you want to take things to that next level, they've got Magic Mastering to make every episode sound its best, Co-Host AI to help with descriptions, titles, and chapter markers, and in-depth analytics if you want to really understand who you're impacting, who's listening, and where they're listening from. Buzzsprout gives you everything you need to host, promote, and track your podcast. And if you want to take things even further, Buzzsprout lets you offer paid subscriptions to your podcast where listeners can help support your show and access extras like bonus content or ad-free episodes, all without having to rely on a separate membership platform. And remember what I said about impact and hearing from your audience? Buzzsprout does have a fan mail feature that lets you put a link directly in your show notes to let listeners instantly send a message to the show. They can be as anonymous or as detailed as the listener wants, and it's an awesome way to help open up your show to your audience. I've been using the fan mail feature since they released it, and I genuinely get super excited every time I get the notification that someone has sent something. And of course, with that in mind, Buzzsprout does have a dedicated customer support team made up of people who genuinely love podcasting and are there to help you out anytime you need it. And while I do know that this is a sponsor segment in a video, so Buzzsprout is literally helping me keep all these lights on by doing this, I do really want to emphasize that Buzzsprout and the team at Buzzsprout, that dedicated team of passionate podcasters, they have been so kind and so supportive of me and the channel and helping me to keep doing what I do for so many years that I am really grateful and really appreciative, not only for that, but that's kind of why I like them so much, is not just the service and the features that they offer, but I have just come to know and trust the people behind the scenes, and I've seen firsthand the passion and the dedication that they have for podcasting and for helping people to be able to podcast. So thank you again so much to Buzzsprout, not just for all those years of support, but for sponsoring this video. And if you think that Buzzsprout sounds like a good fit to help you keep podcasting, check out the link in the description. Podcasting misconception number 3, you need big numbers to make a big impact. I'm sure, like me, most podcasters want our shows to grow. I don't want to have 0 downloads or like negative downloads or people eternal sunshine the podcast out of their brains. But very important to know that more downloads does not necessarily equal success. So something I've learned over the years is that a podcast listener is really dedicated. They're totally on board if they've decided to stick with your show. It's not like, there's a YouTube video, it pops up, you can click away in a few seconds and be gone forever. By the time someone reaches the 47-minute mark of your podcast, they're into it. They are hooked. They are really listening and considering and paying attention to whatever it is that you're sharing. And especially if that person then listens to multiple episodes, you can have a huge impact on your audience without ever even knowing it, especially if that person doesn't reach out to you, they don't go the extra mile to send you an email or write to the show or something like that. You could have a huge impact on a person that you'll never know about because they've never really had the chance to tell you. And those kinds of things really are exponential, because if you have an impact on even just one person, that person has an impact on all of the people in their sphere of the world. All of those people have an impact on those. And suddenly it's like a reverse pyramid scheme where, in a good way, you're spreading your impact and everything to lots of people, even though the numbers on your show might not be the biggest downloads or the most successful podcast by traditional measures. Now let's shift gears to our next podcast misconception, which is you need pro gear. So I'm someone surprise, surprise, who likes gear and equipment. But my gear obsession is something that's just kind of always been the case, like since I was a kid. I've loved audio video gear. You do not need high-end audio video gear to create a podcast. That is absolutely a misconception. What I like to remind people is that whatever you're consuming a podcast on can probably also be used to create a podcast. A phone, a tablet, a computer, whatever you have that has a microphone, maybe a camera, and an internet connection, you have the ability to create and share a podcast. This is something that I and many creators have said for years, that you can do a lot of great stuff with simple gear, but that's honestly only gotten more true as time has gone on. Like the stuff I can create with this 3-year-old iPhone looks so good compared to stuff I could create with like a high-end video camera just a few years ago. So the ability to use what you have and create something that is exceptionally high quality or surprisingly high quality has only increased as time has gone on, and things have just gotten simpler and more accessible. So while you definitely don't need pro gear to create a high quality podcast, we're gonna flip things around, and our next misconception is that gear doesn't matter. I often say, gear doesn't not matter. And I know that I know that double negative makes a lot of positive sense. Gear doesn't not matter. Gear does matter. What I said before is totally true. You can create a podcast with just about anything, and especially if you're willing to put in some time to learn how to best use the tools that you have and maybe work on some editing, some audio processing, you can get some really incredible results. So that means that while you don't need a whole bunch of pro gear to make a podcast, you do need to make sure that your show doesn't sound unpleasant. So even though you can use your phone's built-in microphone, and sometimes that can work great, there are some really stellar microphones out there for like under $50 that can totally help improve your production quality. And if you've got the budget for higher end gear and you want to run something like this Earthworks Ethos through a Rodecaster Pro, that's definitely going to help. Like, it's very easy to make this setup sound good. I just have to plug it in and press record and it sounds good. Don't have to really do much else, but that's definitely not the only way. You definitely don't need to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on a bunch of pro gear. Spending just a little money in some key areas like a decent, inexpensive microphone can really help you take things to that next level. Combine that with some free audio editing software like GarageBand or Audacity and some free YouTube tutorials on how to get the most out of that, and you can really be creating something that is of professional quality at a very non-professional budget. Podcast misconception number 6. If you build it, they will come. I actually do believe this in a way, but I think a lot of us need to adjust our expectations. I think sometimes when you make stuff to share online, you put so much time and energy into it, so much time making it, crafting it, and finally when you hit that publish button, it almost feels like the world is waiting and everybody's gonna notice it right away, and then nobody notices it. So that's probably what's going to happen if you're just starting out in the world of podcasting. You put your show out there, a lot of people aren't really going to notice. But those early days really are the perfect chance for you to start practicing your skills, honing in your production abilities, your hosting abilities, fine-tuning your setup, fine-tuning your workflow to make sure things are as sustainable and practical as possible. So as people start listening and start sharing your show, it only gets better and better for everybody. I found personally that at least running an independent podcast, word of mouth is best for sharing it. If someone finds your show and they tell someone else about it, that's the best way to get someone who's actually going to care to listen to multiple episodes, not just one episode. But that is very, very slow. So you do need to promote your show, hopefully in ways that aren't spammy or annoying, but there's nothing wrong with letting people know that you have a podcast. That's totally an okay thing to do. But going back to my own experience, when I started my podcast 6 years ago at this point, I did it because I had a bunch of stuff that was just sort of taking up space in my brain that I needed to get out. And so the first huge chunk of episodes were mainly for me. They were mainly my way of communicating these things, getting these ideas out there. I had no idea if anyone would listen, and I actually got surprised when people would like send me an email or leave a comment on a YouTube video mentioning the podcast. I was like, oh my God, someone listened to that? Like, people can hear that? It was strange at first, but it took a while, and then more and more people started listening. And even now, all these years later, I don't have the biggest listenership in the world. I don't have the biggest podcast audience in the world, but what I can say is the people who do listen really care about the show, and they really consider it. They take time to appreciate it. They take time to tell me about it. If I don't make a show for a while, they take time to let me know that they wish I was making a show, and that's wonderful. And that, that's been in the case of that specific show, 6 years to get to that point. So if you're wanting to jump in and just, if I put out this podcast, everyone's going to know and everyone's going to love it right away, for most of us, that's probably not the case. But if you really love what you're doing and you really love what you're sharing and what your show is about, it will grow. It just might take a little bit longer than you expect. In podcast misconception number 7, you need to have a video podcast. Now, I love video production, and I recognize that you're watching a video that I have productioned into existence. But I just want to make sure people know that you do not have to have a video podcast. Audio is more than enough. Video can be great, and it can also serve certain topics and niches really well. Some things just lend themselves to being naturally super visual. But it's really important to know, especially if you haven't done something like this before, that adding in video is such a whole separate beast. It's not like, oh, I've got this audio podcast, I'll just sprinkle a little video in there. No, video is, everything about it is complex and bigger and more time consuming. And that's especially true if you're adding in multiple camera angles, multiple audio sources, different hosts, different guests. So while video podcasts are becoming more and more popular and more common, what's also becoming more common is people who would maybe prefer to have an audio podcast feeling like they have to have a video podcast. So I'm just here to tell you, you do not have to have a video podcast. Even when it comes to those video podcasts, most people who watch the episodes, they listen more than they actually watch. So that's something that's also important to take into account as you're setting up a bunch of expensive cameras, setting up this huge workflow. How much work, how much effort do you really want to put into something that's likely going to just be on in the background as someone glances over to the screen every couple minutes? And YouTube even accepts audio-only RSS feeds. So in fact, here's a video I made with Buzzsprout on their channel that explains how to add audio-only podcasts to YouTube. So if you've already got something and you want to take advantage of being able to use YouTube as a podcast directory, you can do that even if you don't have a video podcast. And finally, our last podcast misconception, ending a podcast means that it failed. This is something that I think a lot of people feel strong feelings of guilt about, whether you've stopped making your show or you haven't made an episode in a while. Ending a show does not necessarily mean it failed. Some topics only need a limited number of episodes to cover everything. Sometimes you're in a different stage of life. If you started a podcast a number of years ago when you were single with tons of free time, and now you're married with children, it's gonna maybe be a little bit harder to keep producing that, but your priorities have probably also shifted. Sometimes your passions and your interests just change over time, and you've sort of said everything you can, everything you want to about a certain topic, and you either want to move on to something different or just close that chapter, and that is totally okay. It's still successful. The beautiful thing about podcasts is they can stay there forever. So even if you're not making new ones, people can still find them, still enjoy them, still benefit from them, even though the show is over. But if you are thinking of bringing your podcast to an end and it's not quite sitting right with you, there are a few other things to consider that might help make it more sustainable. First is re-examining your release schedule. If you've been doing, 2 episodes a week for a number of years, maybe going down to 1 episode a week or 1 episode every other week might help things just be more sustainable for the future. So instead of doing no episodes, you're just doing fewer episodes. Another thing that I've been doing for a long time, which I found helps a lot, is batching episodes into seasons. So instead of feeling like I need to just make an episode every week forever, I know that I can just do a run of episodes. I usually do 10 episodes at a time, and that is a season of the show. And then I take a break. And then I come back feeling a bit more refreshed and a bit more excited to keep producing more shows. And you can use that break time to just rest and relax, or you can use it to plan out episodes, plan out new things, and actually feel like you're ahead of the game instead of barely struggling to keep your head above water trying to meet this arbitrary weekly upload thing that you have set for yourself. So even though I'm sure there are a lot more podcast misconceptions out there, as someone who's been producing podcasts in one form or another for over 10 years at this point, these are the ones that I've seen pop up time and again, so they seem to be the most common, especially in terms of just becoming roadblocks for people. So I hope that this helps kind of clear things up so you can have a blast with your cast. Your podcast can be a pod blast. And speaking of things that are a total blast, thank you to everyone who helped support my channel through YouTube channel memberships. And if you want to know everything there is about getting your podcast up and running, check out the complete beginner's guide that I put together right here.